Hello there. Thank you so much for clicking on this video, it really means a lot. Okay, so this is going to be split into 3 videos. The first video will be Oikawa and Atsumu waking up in each other's bodies. The second video will be of them going to school and trying to fit in, and the third video will be of them fixing themselves. By the way, I was going through some heavy shit writing this, and I was also doing my mock exam, so it gets kinda crappy toward the end, but I tried my best. Hope you enjoy, and please think about liking and subscribing, but no pressure. On to the video.
The first thing Atsumu noticed when he woke up was a dull, resounding pain beating up and down his left knee. Half asleep, the boy frowned, trying to replay the memories from last night through his head as he'd normally be able to do. He tried to recall if he'd injured himself in any way. Nothing. He doesn't see anything but translucent darkness and the occasional blurred picture that was too distorted for him to make anything out of it. His frown grows as his eyebrows knit down together in confusion. Not being able to remember something was very rare for Atsumu, since he found he was able to retain information in a fashion similar to a computer. The second thing Atsumu noticed was 2 strong arms wrapped loosely around his waist, his back against what felt like a toned stomach, and a head resting heavily onto his shoulder. The person snores quietly into his ear, and Atsumu feels their hot breath flutter along his neck in a ticklish but also soothing sort of way. Maybe he had gotten drunk with his beloved boyfriend, Sakusa? And now here they were sleeping soundly in the dark-haired man's bed. That would explain why his memory was hazy and why he was cuddling with someone. But why would he be all the way in Tokyo on a school night? And drinking, no less? With his very responsible and always on-time boyfriend? No way. It just didn't add up. The bed also felt different to his precious omiomis, and the room in general held a bitter feeling of coolness. Atsumu feels a shiver jitter up his spine and take refuge in his head for a short while, a pain closely resembling the one in his knee taking place in his brain too, but it faded a couple of long seconds after, unlike the knee one, which seemed to be demanding his undivided attention at all times. The person cuddled up against him, which Atsumu hopes is Sakusa, but he starts to question if it truly is him, as doubt seems to tinge the edges of his thoughts, seems to notice his movements and takes it as him being awake. Atsumu feels soft lips press themselves against his neck in a loving sort of way, and hears a gravelly and groggy voice, that definitely did not belong to his omiomi, murmur something like a, "Good morning." Snapping his eyes open, Atsumu feels panic begin to infest his chest, fear and confusion set into a heavy feeling in his stomach, and his body freezes up in shock. Almost as if he were paralyzed or something. Then, his fight or flight reflexes kick in and he remembers how to move again. Immediately, he shoves the man away and puts some much-needed distance between the two of them. Then, he flips over onto his side to see who exactly it was that was previously laying beside him. Atsumu's heart straight up stops beating and his throat grows dry in the quick millisecond he had to process the situation. He feels his palms grow sweaty and his eyes largen. His original panic and fear multiplying tenfold as he sees the man looking on at him in a shock that seemed completely different from his own. Atsumu's shock was fear-induced. His shock was full of confusion and insecurity. Wait, it's gone. Maybe Atsumu was imagining things, but it seemed as though a flash of sadness had found its way into the man's vulnerable eyes, only to be completely erased and replaced by annoyance and a million questions. Atsumu needed to stop himself from analyzing the man any further and start trying to figure out what the hell was actually going on here. What the hell am I doing here? He questioned hurriedly. Looking down, he found that they were both, thankfully, fully clothed. The confirmation that his initial thoughts were proven wrong. When he'd woken up in bed with his best friend's boyfriend, Atsumu had assumed the worst already. That, paired with the fact that adrenaline seemed to be rushing through every vein in his body, gave him an unexpected wave of confidence that he was definitely going to ride until it came falling back down onto himself. The boy in front of him continues to stare in confusion, not answering Atsumu's question, and the other found himself growing a little angry and impatient. He decides to repeat his question, but this time throwing in some of that new confidence he had gained. "I asked what the hell I was doing here," he shouts, scurrying to distance himself even more, only to hit the smooth white wall behind him with a soft thud. "What the hell are you talking about?" Iwaizumi's hard green eyes darken as his confusion grows. He sits up a lot slower and calmer than the other. His voice was slurred with sleep, so Atsumu found he had to strain his ears to hear the boy. You're the one who barged in here and demanded I let you stay over, even though it's a school night and shit. A yawn crawls its way up Uesumi's throat, and the spiky-haired boy raises a hand to cover his mouth. His emerald eyes glance over to the clock, and a groan emits from his lips. Hopping off the bed with agile grace and agility, Uesumi stretches his arms over his head until a satisfying click noise can be heard resonating through the quiet room. His tank top rides up, being dragged along by his arms, and exposes his stomach, making it apparel to Atsumu that the boy must have worked out a lot. It's 6 o'clock, so my parents should be gone by now. I'll use their bathroom, and you can use mine, he grumbles before walking around the bed, making his way toward the door. Atsumu watched him with caution, hands still gripping tightly onto the thin sheets. He tenses up as he sees Uesumi make a pit stop from his original destination to his side of the bed. Strong hands come down to gently pull the back of his head forward, and Atsumu doesn't have any time to process before their lips are locked together in a sweet kiss. And as quickly as the lips arrived, they were gone, just like that. Atsumu's shock consumes him, and he barely registers the sound of a door clicking open and closed before it's too late to scream at the other boy for what he just did. What the actual fuck? Atsumu tries harder to remember what happened last night, but he doesn't remember anything at all. Were they really cheating on their boyfriends with each other? No way. Atsumu would never betray Sakusa like that, and he knows for a fact that Uesumi was head over heels for Oikawa. So what the hell were they doing in bed together? Uesumi had acted like this was a completely normal, and had even looked at Atsumu like he was the weird one. He felt his knee throb in agony as he tries to stand up too quickly. Atsumu winces before stretching his leg out, hoping to relieve some of the pain, but it seems to be of no avail. It still hurts. Kawa? There's a spare toothbrush in the cabinet. He heard Uesumi call from outside the room, his deep voice muffled, but ultimately it was more clear than before. He's probably fully awake now. Gee, thanks. That doesn't really explain what the hell I'm doing in your bed when we both have boyfriends. Atsumu mutters to himself, acting spiteful to hide his confusion from no one in particular, since Uesumi wasn't even in the room anymore. What the hell? What was going on here? Had Uesumi mistaken him for Oikawa? How the hell was that possible? They looked nothing alike. Have I switched bodies with my best friend? He whispers in shock. On any other day, Atsumu would have laughed the idea away and called whoever brought it up a fucking moron, but today wasn't any other day. He just randomly woke up next to his best friend's boyfriend with no recollection of the night, or even day for that matter, before. And not to mention he just got called Kawa. Yeah, this seemed like the only plausible explanation. But how? Is it really possible to switch lives with someone? Was it some kind of dark magic? Was this a curse? If so, who had he wronged to place a curse on him? No one comes to mind, and Atsumu starts to doubt himself again. Maybe this was all a strange dream that he'd awaken from in a short while. That seemed like the most logical explanation. That this was all just a bad dream. Well, maybe it was more of Atsumu's wishful thinking than the most realistic circumstance. But he still chose to believe it was a dream, at least for the time being, as to not panic any more than he already had. Looking down at himself, Atsumu does notice how pale and skinny he looks. He hurriedly grabs a handful of hair, finding it to be a lot softer than usual, and pulls it into his line of sight. Brown, fluffy locks, and a skinny but strong body? Yep, definitely reminded him a lot of Oikawa. Looking around the clean and organized room, he can't help himself but think about how Sakusa would probably feel comfortable in here. Atsumu spotted a white door parallel to the wall next to him and suspects that it could possibly lead to the bathroom Uesumi was talking about. Rising from the bed to his feet, Atsumu quickly speed walks over to the door, pushing it open. He was relieved to find his assumptions were correct. The bathroom was nice. It smelled strongly of bleach, not that it wasn't something he wasn't already used to, and everything seemed to be white. He turned his head harshly to look at the mirror and was horrified at what he saw staring back at him. What the fuck? Atsumu feels the fear return in his stomach as he realizes that everything looks and feels too surreal, too horrifying, to be confined to a dream. He was convinced that his brain would never come up with something so strange while he was in slumber. Most of the time, Atsumu didn't even have dreams, it was all just dark. Or at the very least, he wouldn't be able to remember them even seconds after awakening. Should he tell Uezumi what had happened? No. Hearing what Oikawa usually told him about his boyfriend, the boy wouldn't believe him. And, plus, Atsumu had watched enough of those Freaky Friday movies to suspect that if he told someone other than the person he switched with, then this would be permanent. That's right. He just had to contact Oikawa and maybe then he'd remember what on earth happened last night. But, thinking back to when he had scanned the room earlier, Atsumu didn't see any phone lying around. Maybe that was something he could ask Uezumi about, unsure as to whether Oikawa was protective of his phone or didn't really care where it ended up. Opening up the cabinet as the spiky-haired boy had instructed, he found a still packaged purple toothbrush lying there, unused as promised. Ripping open the half-cardboard half-plastic container, Atsumu removed the toothbrush, discarding the remains in the bin next to the sink. Looking back into the cabinet, he saw an innocent-looking tube of toothpaste lying away from him behind a couple of deodorants. Reaching his hand in, he made sure not to knock anything over and pulled out the toothpaste. Then he brushed his teeth, still weirded out by his reflection as it mimicked his expressions in an unfamiliar way. Finally finishing, he splashes his face with water a couple of times before stalking his way out of the bathroom. Just standing in the middle of the bedroom awkwardly, contemplating whether he should leave the room to find Uezumi or look for an Aoba Joshai uniform in here. Fortunately for Atsumu, just as he was about to leave, the door creaks open loudly and the boy in question makes his way over in confident steps. He's fully dressed in his school clothes and is holding something in both his hands. Here he says, throwing another uniform onto the bed between them, along with a phone with a pale blue phone case. My mom washed it for you, so be thankful. Also, your phone is fully charged, so I put mine on instead. And with that brief sentence, he's gone. Damn, Kawa doesn't get very much love, does he? Atsumu mutters lowly to himself. Oikawa was always telling him how much he adored Uezumi. And he's seen the way Uezumi looks at Oikawa. His gaze is always filled with so much love and hope. And did he mention love? But, hell, he didn't show it very much. In fact, Atsumu pretty sure he goes out of his way to hide his emotions. How strange. Nevertheless, he goes to collect the clothing. Scooping the soft fabric into his unusually skinny arms, he begins changing. After he was done with that, he grabbed the phone off of the bed and went to look through it, but was blocked by the password screen. Luckily for him, Oikawa was very predictable and also a helpless romantic. So he typed in the numbers of Uezumi's birthday and was met by the homepage. Oh, Kawa. He laughs, but immediately falls silent and gets back to work. Atsumu goes into Oikawa's contacts and feels tempted to look through his other conversations but stops himself. He scrolls down until he finds his name. He didn't have to go very far since they text all the time, and types a very explanational, long message explaining everything that had happened. Atsumu and Oikawa's private chat. Oikawa's perspective, waking up in pain was nothing new to Oikawa. In fact, it had practically become routine now. The almost numbed but still noticeable ache burning along his knee, making itself gnaw across his whole body, weakening his leg and making him want to stay in bed all day. But, today, his knee injury seemed to be completely erased from his acknowledgement. A small smile played on his lips. Today would be a good day then. He could give his all in volleyball practice and not have IWHN scolding him every time he limps from the pain. Memories of his precious team and boyfriend flash through his mind and he feels his smile grow bigger. A floaty feeling bursts in his chest and he's overcome with happiness. He really did love his life. Then, all in a flash, he feels his happiness wash away, stolen and replaced by a loud ringing in his ears and a bold, throbbing pain thundering around his skull. His immediate instinct is to raise his hand up to his head, on the spot the pain had originated. But, he was distracted by something. His hair. It felt coarser than usual. That didn't make any sense. Oikawa had always made sure to keep his hair in top condition. Sure, it could get a little messy in his sleeve, but it still felt soft. His hair right now felt like normal hair. He only had a couple of seconds to process that realization before another pain erupts, this time on his back. A groan emits from his lips and he arches his back in agony. With his eyebrows knitted down together, Oikawa realizes that someone was shouting at him. Oikawa had never been woken up by so much noise before, usually arising to a soothing alarm, if it was a weekday, the blissful sound of silence if it was the weekend, or by a soft kiss to his cheek, if he was staying at this boyfriend's house. This felt so foreign to Oikawa, he felt so confused and shocked and scared. His heart bruised up quite the storm in his chest, as his mind raced with everything and nothing at all. Fluttering his eyes open, Oikawa sees he doesn't recognize the wall he's against. Confusion and fear begin to build up even more, as he turns around and finally sees the person shouting at him and hears what they have to say too. Idiot? We're gonna be so fucking late cuz of ya. I swear to fucking God if ya don't get your fat arse out of bed right now I'm leaving without ya. Oh Osamu. Had he had a sleepover with Atsumu? No, today was Friday and their parents wouldn't allow them to go to a whole different city on a school night. So why was B here? And why was his best friend's twin so angry at him? He couldn't remember anything from last night. As hard as he tried, it was like someone had deleted it. The last thing he remembers is walking out of his house a couple of hours after school, but then it stops there. What? Why re ya so surprised to see me? Ya lost your memory or some? Don't worry, I'll remind ya. He bends down to pick a trainer off of the ground and sends it flying towards Oikawa. It hits him in his upper arm and an immediate flash of pain manifests there. He flinches in pain and watches as the shoe lands on the bed, remembering it as one of Atsuma's favorite pairs. We're gonna be late for school, dumbass. We have to be there by 6:30 and it's already 6:10, ya fucking moron. He sits in silence and hesitantly raises his gaze to meet his best friend's twin brother. The silver-haired boy raised an eyebrow, eyes widening in anger. Get up now? Or do I need to remind ya that shoes come in pairs, and the other one is right there? He starts, pointing at the ground. Oikawa follows his finger and lands on the side of a shoe laying on its side innocently. He sees it is the twin of the shoe currently on his lap. Ya need me to shove it down your fucking throat? Get up. He takes a threatening step toward the shoe and Oikawa jumps out of bed in a flash, his hands raised in the air as a sign of surrender. Oh okay, I'm up, I swear. Good. Ya got 5 minutes to get ready before I leave without ya. And with that absurdly soft-spoken remark, Osamu had left the room. Oikawa was alone and able to finally process what the actual hell was happening. The points where the shoes had harassed him still hurt a bit, but the pain had faded enough for him to be able to ignore it. He goes back to touch his hair. Yep. Definitely not his. His hair was soft and as fluffy as a cloud. Oikawa never let anyone but himself touch his hair in fear of them messing it up, so it was always nice and healthy. The hair in his hands right now felt like it had been bleached. It wasn't too dry, but it was clear as day. Whoever's head of hair this was, they didn't care about keeping theirs in top condition like himself. Next, he looked down to see his arms and saw that they were a lot tanner and musclier than usual. Confusion blossomed in him and he tried to convince himself that this was all a sick sort of twisted dreamed up, but the faded pain still detectable made it obvious that this was not a dream. The only logical explanation his brain could conjure up at the moment was that he had switched lives with Atsumu. At first, he wanted to laugh, it seemed stupid. But when all the pieces of evidence are lined up side by side, it becomes evident that this must be the only explanation that would make even an inch of logical sense. Not that this situation was very logical in the first place. Oikawa didn't feel as scared as he thought he would have been if he woke up in his best friend's body. He was just confused and a little intrigued. How did this even happen in the first place? He scanned the room in search for the bathroom and unconfidently walked to a wooden door. Pushing it open, he felt relief wash over him as he was introduced to a bathroom. He walked in and was immediately met with his reflection. Could he even call it his? His suspicions had been correct. He was, in fact, in Atsuma's body. Damn. He thought he'd be a little more worried, but instead, it was kind of cool. Whoa. He unhelpfully added, amazed. Sumu? 3 minutes. Flinching in shock, he remembers the situation he's in and quickly gets ready. He remembers Atsumu talking about how he hated the color of his toothbrush and Oikawa knew his least favorite color was green, so he grabbed the green toothbrush and squirted some of the toothpaste onto it. After brushing his teeth, he walks out off room and opened the large closet and pulled out the only Inarizaki uniform left in there, next to an empty hanger, and threw it on quickly. He then put some sensible-looking shoes on and searches the room for a phone. He couldn't find one. 1 minute. Okay, I'm ready. He felt the need to shout back, with all the verbal harassment he's been receiving. He struggles to tie his tie as he clumsily runs down the stairs, ignoring the judging eyes on him. After he gets the tie on suitably enough, Oikawa looks up into Osamu's eyes and only receives more judgment. Yen. Well, I'm just feeling a little bit sick today. Okay, he didn't sound convinced. Osamu sighed before walking over to the door to put his shoes on. He then walks into another room and Oikawa's left standing there confused. But he feels relief wash over him as the silver-haired boy returns with 2 phones in his hands. Here he tosses the phone over and Oikawa had no problem catching it. One unread message from Kawa. What the fuck happened? I don't know. BTW, your brother's hella mean. After waiting for a while, he sighed in defeat and accepted that he probably wouldn't get a message back straight away, like normal. Come on, Atsumu. At school. End of part 1.
Well, there you have it. Told ya it got crappy. Anyways, again, I would really appreciate it if you could like and subscribe. This was my first video and I'm super nervous about this. It took me weeks to finish and even though the end is shit, I'm still proud of it. Thank you so much for watching.